Hey y'all, welcome back to the channel. Today we have some pretty exciting news. Independent John Kiper, who ran for governor of New Hampshire in the 2024 election cycle, is running again for governor, this time as an independent. I called him an independent. He actually was a previous Democratic nominee, but he has switched to become a independent in this race. And that is really, really massive for this race. So, to start off, this is John Kiper here. This is his page, votekiper.org. And he's really quite a cool guy, it seems, from what I can see, from his policies, from his page. Yeah. But I basically wanted to show this this video, this interview with him of him.
Welcome back to Close Up.
That's allowed. Him launching his campaign. Turn that down loud.
This year, the race for governor has been somewhat slower than usual to develop. By this time in 2023, we had two major candidates either declared or exploring a run.
He's very good, as you'll see, at answering questions. And he makes a strong case for himself in this interview. I'm going to skip to the most important parts here, though.
In this cycle, incumbent Governor Kelly Ayotte, only 7 months removed from a double-digit victory, is casting a long shadow. But Democrats are also sorting out issues.
First, actually, it's probably good to add some context. So as this guy just said, previously, this is what the Democratic election looked like in New Hampshire. Kelly Ayotte, I believe her name is, 400,000 votes, 53% of the vote, 300,000 votes, 44% of the vote. So double digit there, win by the Republican in a state which Kamala Harris won. And here is what the nomination looked like for the Democratic nominee. So Joyce Craig barely beat out Cindy Warmington. And John Kiper, of course, down here, all the way, Jonathan Kiper, they have his full government name down there, is all the way down here in third with 9.4%. But John Kiper is just a guy. These two, I believe, are politicians, established people in the state, excuse me. So the fact that he got 11,000 votes is pretty impressive. So Joyce Craig went on to go into the general election and lose to the Republican. And the Republicans have then, therefore, been in power now since 2017, so around a decade. 8 years now, but it will be 9 years 2026, 10 years in 2028. Of course, with the popular Governor Chris. So there we go. This is what I get for filming these videos at 11:42. I didn't mean to click on him. This is Chris Sununu. Here he is. People actually thought he might run for senator. He did not. That would have been bad news for Democrats if he did. As you can see, the Democrats last held the governorship in 2017, and they last won in 2013. So last time a Democrat won was 2013. Yeah. So that's some context on the governor's race. But now to John Kiper himself. First, I want to start here, well, which is why he's running.
Struggling in this state and in this country.
What were some of the specific motivating factors or prompts that made you leave the Democratic Party?
You know, it was funny. I was going around the state, going to these town meetings with Democrats, and at several of the meetings, I'd be sitting there giving my pitch about housing. I'd say, we need housing because of inflation and because of homelessness and because we need more young people in the state to take care of an aging population. And more than once, people would look at me and they'd say, yeah, you know, we don't want any more housing in New Hampshire. You know, our kids need housing, but we don't, and we're all set. And these were generally older folks. And at one point, I just thought to myself, I'm like, one of us is in the wrong meeting. You know, either I need to find another party or the Democrats need to change.
Exactly. That's a really good statement there. Democrats, they're not willing to change.
And I honestly thought that I could get in there and change the Democratic Party and change its viewpoint and help it open up to a broader scope of people. And they just are inflexible. The leadership does not want to change. They don't want to learn any lessons. And fundamentally, the Democratic establishment does not want to hear opinions that they disagree with. That's really the biggest problem.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really good point. The Democratic establishment recently just kicked out David Hogg off a voting technicality because he was saying, hey, let's primary useless Democrats. Hey, let's bring some young people into the fray. So, of course, they absolutely do not want to hear new opinions. And this guy has had it. John Kiper has had it. And there's another bit further along here.
To someone who says essentially all that's going to happen from an independent run for governor.
So he's asked here what, if the common question everyone's asked, are you a spoiler candidate for challenging the two-party system, right? And he handles this question really, really well.
You expressed about parties are common, I think, and reflected in the fact that New Hampshire has so many undeclared voters. But there are some stark political realities to confront. What do you say to someone who says essentially all that's going to happen from an independent run for governor is that you'll be a spoiler for the Democratic candidate?
Well, given that the Democrats haven't put up a candidate yet, I would say that if they do put up a candidate, that person will be a spoiler for me. I can win this election. I can beat Kelly Ayotte. And my message to the Democrats is do not put up a candidate. You will lose. You have lost for a decade straight. You have proven you do not understand what the independent voters of New Hampshire want. And I do, because I'm one of them.
That is a really, really strong case to make. You've lost for a decade straight. I think it's just under a decade by the time he'll be, on the ballot. But nonetheless, it's still pretty much true. The Republicans have been winning New Hampshire since 2017. They've been winning it, and they won it before. Even when Hillary carried the state, Republicans won. Even when Biden carried the state, Republicans won. Even when Kamala Harris carried the state, Republicans won. Republicans continue to win in this state, and that's something we see a lot actually in these two states. In these two states, I'm referring, of course, to Vermont, the inverted triangle to New Hampshire, where you have popular Democrats from that state, very Democratic on the national level, but you look closer and they got a Republican governor, Vermont currently has a Republican governor, even though they have Bernie fucking Sanders as their senator. These states are really weird. Again, Maine, Angus King, independent, pretty progressive guy, Republican or Democratic governor, but he is accompanied by Susan Collins, the Republican. So these states really do love having independent candidates, Republican candidates, and Democratic candidates, even though they mostly vote for the Democrats on the national level, Maine being the exception because of their weird electoral vote thing going on. But anyway, so there's very strong case here for Kiper, saying that the Democrat would be the spoiler candidate. I 100% agree. Democrats have been running in this state since, New Hampshire was a fucking colony. So give an independent a try. Let this guy take on the Republican. We know it might work. There's a very good chance it might work. Both neighboring states have done it and succeeded. The New England states are clearly open to it. So what's next? We got over here, 1040.
The Constitution. That is very important. Republicans, do not forget the Constitution. Democrats, do not forget the Constitution. The people that wrote it were
this whole interview is actually very, very good. It's on his website.
Very wise, and we need to keep that in mind at all times.
As we wrap up here, the early part of these campaigns, a lot of it is those sort of town and local, city, county, Republican or Democratic meetings, the rubber chicken dinners, etc. As an independent candidate, you don't have that. So how are you going to campaign?
That has honestly been one of my biggest hurdles, and that's why we're forming the New Hampshire Independent Party. We're just getting this off the ground right now, but we're hoping to create.
This is really important. So, of course, even if he does win the governorship, in the hypothetical he does win the governorship, I don't know how likely that is. I don't know. Even if he does, he doesn't have anybody in the state assembly. And the state assembly is his whole thing. So many problems with the New Hampshire State Assembly, you would be surprised. Even if he does get in, he has to deal with them, and they're Republicans and Democrats. So this is really important. He's forming an independent party,
town
keep the
and
momentum
county
going.
groups that we can meet up all over the state. And I'm hoping, hey, if you're a Democratic county or town chair and you're frustrated with the leadership and frustrated with the way the party is going, hey, there's a new party in town, and Republicans too. If you're tired of voting for people that are not aligned with your better economic issues, there's a new party in town, and we're here for you, not for the donor class.
And that's really great too. That last part he slipped in there. If you go to his Instagram, he says very similar things. He is a 100% anti-corporate PAC candidate, wealthy elite donor candidate. He says that multiple times. That's the thing I've heard him say the most, is he does not like the rich and the powerful. He wants to take them on. So that's really what attracted me to his campaign, and I think it'll do him well in this campaign. Yeah. So some of the more things he's saying here. So here's New Hampshire, and it's total registered voters, right? Which way the voters fall. 32.7% Democratic, 28.18% Republican. This state has 28.18% Republican. That's 28%. That's not even a third. And the Republicans win. That's insane. That is entirely insane. Third party, 2.7% checks out. And then unaffiliated, 36.92%. 36.92%. So logically speaking, Republicans should not be winning in this state. They shouldn't be. But it's because of this unaffiliated, this 36% here, that Republicans are able to poll mostly from. Democrats are not able to do as well. Republicans win. So having an unaffiliated candidate, having an independent candidate, you automatically have a much better chance, because you're going to poll the Democrats if you run on leftist positions, as they'll go into, as you've heard. But you're also going to poll a lot of the Republicans, which you go to the Republican Party. And in fact, you're probably going to pull some Republicans who don't want to vote for the typical Republican, who want to vote for an independent. So absolutely, Democrats should not run a candidate in this race. They should just let him take on Kelly Atoll. They should absolutely let him do that. And he's got certainly voter base here. Certainly voter base. Yeah. And then this is just some overall politics that I think is important. The Americans' view on the need for a third major party. So what percent of Americans think that we need a third major party? Well, this year it's last year actually it was 58%. 58%. 58%. Just for, reference, the last time that the two major parties were viewed positively and said, yeah, we don't need a major party, was 2004. 2004 was the last time which America said, yeah, we're okay with the two major parties. Even then, you had 40% saying no. We had 56% saying, yeah. Ever since then, it's been downhill. So, I don't know what the fuck happened in 2012. 58%. And then here's the last part here. Independent party ID tied for high. Democratic ID tied for low. 43% identified as independents in 2023. That is a holistic USA, everyone in the United States, the voters, this is what they polled. Political independents continue to constitute the largest political bloc in the United States, with an average of 43% of U.S. adults identifying this way in 2023, tying the record for 2014. 2014. This is right before 2016, of course, where Jill Stein and what's his name? Gary Johnson got millions of votes in that general election. Jill Stein alone got 1.5 million votes, if I'm not mistaken. Gary Johnson getting 4 million. One of the best showings for a independent candidate in a very long time. So independents are very popular in the United States because most people are independent. And this really brings me back to what Bernie was saying. Bernie Sanders, after the loss of Dan Osborne in the Senate in 2024, was talking about the need for running candidates as independents. And he's right. He's absolutely right. You're able to get more people to come out and vote for you. Dan Osborne was able to come within, I think, single digits of ousting a Republican by running as an independent. So definitely a campaign to follow here. John Kiper, very good candidate. All his policies are here. He's about, he talks about reducing taxes for the average working class and increasing taxes on the wealthiest. And I think that's awesome. He's also not bought by big money, so you can assume he might pass some campaign finance reform. Yeah, he seems like a pretty solid guy. Everything, all of his policies I see are pretty good, pretty good. He's got a merch store too. There you go. Yeah, so definitely check out John Kiper. Yeah. Anyway, that's it. See ya.